My name is Swann Hernandez. When I worked for the Navy, my name was Tom Swann, and this is an exclusive video for the Department of Defense Globe, gay, lesbian, bisexual employees, Department of Defense. And I was supposed to do this video 4 or 5 years ago, but I've had health problems, and I'm just now able to do it. And it is a blessing for me to be in your presence today. Many of the current Department of Defense gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning employees did not know our history and don't know how we got our civil rights. And so I'd like to share some of that history with you today. I was at GS-11, stationed at the Point Mugu Navy Base, sometimes called Pacific Missile Test Center, which was north of Los Angeles on the Pacific Ocean in Ventura County, California, in Southern California, Ventura County. I worked there from 1986 to 1995. My supervisor's name, let me just back up, I worked in the Unmanned Aerial Vehicle Program Office, and the supervisor's name was Tom, so my name was also Tom, so to distinguish between me and him, everybody called me Gator because I was born in Gainesville, Florida, and I'm a native of Florida. I'm a Florida Gator fan, so everybody called me Gator. And that way they wouldn't get me confused with the supervisor. So as you can see here on my badge, here, just my badge at the Point Mugu Navy Base. To get on base, I had to show this badge to the security guard. It says Gator. And then I'd like to show you this gift, if you want to call it that. I went to work one morning. We had some Marines that were attached to our unit. They were the pilots for the unmanned aerial vehicle. I went to my office one morning, and on my desk was this stuffed animal. It's a gator. And as you can see, it has a knife through the head, 2 spears through the belly, a collar around its neck with a screw and the letter U and my name engraved on it, Tom Swann, and a broken condom. And I was stunned when I saw this on my desk. And I just never experienced this in my whole working career. And the sergeant came in and said, I looked at this broken condom, and I didn't know what that was supposed to mean. And he said, the condom broke, you're going to die of AIDS like Magic Johnson. And it was very traumatic for me. And but my supervisor just laughed and thought it was no big deal. This Marine was never punished, and everybody just accepted it. That if you're gay, we're gonna make your life miserable, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's acceptable behavior to harass gays. That's the way it was in the Navy in 1992. In December of 1992, I went to the Naval Air Warfare Center in Crystal City, Virginia, on official travel. And during my lunch break, I went to a hotel in downtown Washington and met with the Clinton transition team. This was before President Clinton took the oath of office. It was December 1992. And I met with the Clinton transition team, and they asked me, as a former gay Marine Corps veteran, to come out of the closet and build public support for President Bill Clinton's plan to lift the ban on gays in the military. And so they asked me if I would do it, and I said I would. I was willing to do it. I didn't think anything would happen to me. I was a civilian employee of the Navy. I didn't think I'd have any repercussion. And so I did it. And then I immediately went back to the Crystal City, and we were having the Naval Air Warfare Center Christmas party, and there was an admiral there. And I walked up to him and I said, "Sir, I'd like to be appointed to the Pentagon Working Group, Defense Working Group, Pentagon Working Group, which consisted of the Clinton transition team officials and Department of Defense leadership, military leadership, and they were having meetings trying to figure out if they could lift the ban or not. And that was very controversial, and the Clinton transition team was having trouble, and I asked if I could be appointed to that Pentagon Working Group. I also asked if I could be appointed as a liaison from the Navy to the LGBTQ community. And the admiral was stunned, but he asked for my resume, and I happened to have one. I gave it to him, and he said he would think about it, but he never approved any of these things. And so I went back to Point Mugu, California, Ventura County, California, Point Mugu, and I did a feature story on local TV and for the Los Angeles Times. And the Navy immediately began to retaliate against me, and it was very, very difficult. And the directorate head of the weapons division, my civilian employee, GM14, met with me, asked me to meet with him in his office, and he had picked up the newspaper with me on the cover and waved it in my face and said he was offended about what I was doing. And I was supposed to be the Combined Federal Campaign chairman for the whole base. They removed that position from me. I was the Total Quality Management chairman for the base. They removed that from me. They put me on the unfunded list so that I would not. Eventually, they would go to terminate me. It meant there was no job order number for my employment. I was working on the AMRAAM missile, and they had plenty of money, but they put me on the unfunded list because they wanted to terminate me. And let's see. In 1992, I was rated outstanding. In 1991, I was rated outstanding. I received a $500 cash bonus. 1992, they said I was a poor quality worker, and it was sad. Myself and a lesbian co-worker were put in what they call the banishment room. And keep in mind, I was supposed to be the CFC chairman. I was the Total Quality Management chairman. I was very involved in the base, and met with many people all the time. Was well liked, very popular. When I came out of the closet, they put me in the banishment room, and it was so bad. All the employees on the base, the admiral on the base, told all the employees not to talk to me, never say anything to me, never talk to me, and they put me in the banishment room. And it was so bad that the mail clerk was afraid to come in our office and put our mail on our desk. She would just slide it under the door because she didn't want to be contaminated by the queers in the office. And we had no job duties. We just read the newspaper all day, and it was just very boring, and it was very difficult. And I was assaulted by 2 Marines. I went to the colonel's retirement party, Marine Aviation Detachment, and I was sitting there, honoring the colonel, listening to the speakers, and 2 Marines came up to me and said, "You don't belong here," because I was gay, and they picked me up and took me out in the grass and dumped me on my head in the grass, injured me. A GS-12 who didn't like gays, didn't like Latinos, didn't like people of color, tried to take a swing at my face, and unfortunately he missed. But that was very traumatic, and I left the base at that point and vowed I would never return to that office again, and it was just terrible. Very bad. And so I went to the Clinton inauguration in January of 1993. I met Representative Barney Frank, David Mixner, Morris Kite, Dr. Frank Kameny, Bob Hatoy, and Reverend Troy Perry, also the mother of slain Navy sailor Alan Schindler. I could not file, when I turned after the inauguration, I went back to Point McGill, and I could not file an EEO complaint against the Navy because sexual orientation was not covered in the EEO policy. So I was stymied there. So I asked for some help, and I was, knew a lot of people, a lot of networks, knew a lot of people in Southern California, and I approached the ACLU, and I met with them 2 or 3 times, and they agreed to represent me. So March 11, 1993, we filed litigation against the Navy. And it was a national news story. It was the New York Times, Federal Times, Navy Times, Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, LA Times, Santa Monica Outlook, and you can see some of the media coverage over here on this billboard, over this poster over here. And I was on the front page, U.S. News and World Report had my picture, and I was on the front page of the Gainesville Sun in Florida, and my mother had told me, she said, don't tell your grandmother that you're gay and you have AIDS and do what you're doing, because she won't understand. And I lobbied Congress with Greg Cameron, Keith Meinhold, Dusty Pruitt, Nancy Russell, Keith Meinhold, Nancy Russell, Dusty Pruitt, Perry Watkins, and we lobbied Congress, and a journalist went with us to interview, to listen to the conversation with the congressman about lifting the ban, and they wrote a story that was published on the front page of the Gainesville Sun. And so that's how my grandmother found out I was gay and had AIDS, what I was doing by reading the front page of the Gainesville Sun. And so, at the March on Washington, I was published in 4 books. I spoke on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, the same place where Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke 30 years earlier. He gave his I Have a Dream speech. we tried to have a memorial service at the Vietnam Wall, and we marched, our color guard, gay veteran color guard, marched to the Vietnam Wall, and we tried to have a little service there to pray for our gay veterans that died in Vietnam. And the park police came on horseback and broke us up and almost threatened to arrest us. I was in the National LGBTQ Color Guard for the parade. We led off the parade. I wore my Marine Corps uniform, carried the Marine Corps flag, and then at the rally in front of 1 million people, I carried the rainbow flag, and I wore my Marine Corps uniform. I was the second person announced on stage, and stood there for 1 million people, and it was just wonderful. And the Commandant of the Marine Corps saw that on C-SPAN, and he was very angry that I would wear a Marine Corps uniform at that rally, and really was outraged, and he called the colonel at the Marine Aviation Detachment, Fort McGill, to find out who I was, and try to figure out how they could stop my activism. He was very angry. It made him, it was really, really bad. In Memorial Day 1993, we wanted to place a wreath at the memorial service on Memorial Day at the LA National Cemetery. This program was sponsored by the Culver City VFW, and we asked if we could have a wreath for gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning veterans that died in wars, and they said no, and so you had to threaten a lawsuit. And so we did get to present our wreath, and people kind of groaned when we were announced, and we took our wreath and presented it with the other veteran groups, and that was a national news story. So then our litigation finally saw some results. The Navy said that they just didn't have the money to pay me anymore. They ran out of money, was their excuse. And the ACLU explained they were playing a shell game. When I was working on the AMRAAM missile, there was plenty of money for my job. And they put me on the unfunded list. It was just a shell game. So the Office of Special Counsel agreed to investigate. Very controversial. First time the Office of Special Counsel ever investigated a case for a gay employee. In the Office of Special Counsel guidelines, it really doesn't say that they cover discrimination against gays. So this was historic. They decided to take the case. They came to the base, they interviewed me, they investigated the case. The Navy officials all denied that they discriminated against me. The director had denied that he ever brought the newspaper to work and waved it in my face. They all lied. It's amazing how when there's no TV camera or investigator, they're very bold and say they hate gays. But so once you turn on a TV camera or bring a radio interview microphone or an investigator shows up, all of a sudden they deny that they're bigots. And that's what it was in 1992. And we won a partial victory. The Navy worked out an agreement with the Office of Special Counsel that they would not prosecute any Navy officials. They had the power to do that, but they decided not to prosecute because it was so controversial and gay was so new to the Navy. They said, we'll give them a break. We're not going to prosecute them. But they said they would move me to a place where I'd be 50 feet away from the man that tried to take a swing at my face. I'd still work with the Marines, still have the same supervisor, and they wouldn't. The Navy was not going to be punished, and the Office of Special Counsel was not going to say their conduct was wrong. So that was not good enough for me. I was having nightmares. I had PTSD of the assault. I was having nightmares. Every night I would go to sleep and I would dream that the Navy officials would come to my house, break down my front door, go upstairs to my condo and strangle me to death. And it was just terrifying dreams. It happened every night. And so I had PTSD and I had major depression, and of course I was very lonely because I was isolated, and so I wasn't able to go back to that job site. I wasn't able to go back. I didn't feel safe, and so the Navy put me on unpaid leave. First I was on sick leave, and then they put me on unpaid leave, and that was very difficult. And then in July of 1993, I went to the National Organization for Women National Convention in Boston, where Patricia Ireland was reelected national president, and I was a Christian Scientist at that time. So I met with the Christian Science Monitor newspaper editorial board. Colin Powell spoke first, General Colin Powell, then I spoke. And I'm proud to say that the editorial board was 3 members, and they voted 2-1 to support lifting the ban. And that Christian Science Monitor, one of the most conservative newspapers in the country, and they voted 2-1 to lift the ban. So then in the summer of 1974, the ACLU decided to file a claim under the Rehabilitation Act of 1974. And what that meant was that if you were a large employer or the government, and you had an employee that had a nervous breakdown or something at work, or was injured at work, you had a duty and responsibility under the Rehab Act of 1974 to give them a safe place to work and work with them and adapt with them and help them rehabilitate themselves and become a productive employee again. So we followed that petition, and the Navy never heard of it before. And so the Navy asked me to go to a psychologist and get a report to explain all this. And they gave us like 1 weekend to do it. And I met with a psychologist. She was a lesbian psychologist who worked at the Cambridge State Hospital. And she looked at the requirements, what they wanted in 1 weekend. She said this would take normally 2 months to do. But we did it in 1 weekend. And what she wrote very powerfully, the admiral of the base said that gays were a threat to national security. In a report, what she wrote was that institutionalized homophobia in the Navy was a threat to the U.S. Constitution. Well, the Navy did not like her report, and they said that her report lacked rational medical opinions. So it was irrational to say that homophobia was wrong, was bad for the country. Navy sent me to their psychologist, and he looked at this mutilated doll, and saw all the things that happened to me, and I feel blessed. He agreed with our psychologist and said under the Rehab Act the Navy had a duty to let me go back to work in a safe place and stop harassing me. And all this work, all these psychological reports, of course the Navy psychologist had more time to work on his reports than they gave us, but all these reports, all this work, I was unpaid. I was almost starved to death. I didn't have money to pay for my mortgage. I didn't have money to pay my utilities. I couldn't pay for food. Couldn't put gas in my car. I had PTSD. I had nightmares every night. And it was, for 9 months this went on. And the Navy, their goal was, their strategy, when they realized that their doctor agreed with my doctor for the Rehab Act, they realized they basically lost. And so their strategy at that point was to stall. And to, hopefully they knew I had AIDS. They knew I was dying. My CD4 count, because of the stress, went from 800 to 74. And they were hoping I would die. And then the case would end, and they would not have to accept gays, and they could say they won. And it sounds tough, but the facts are there. We can prove it. The ACLU they documented it all. The LA Men's Study, the first federally funded AIDS research project in the country, documented the decline in my health and all that I went through. It's all documented, and we have a strong case, and it was difficult. And I was not eligible for unemployment compensation because the Navy didn't fire me. They just put me on unpaid leave while they figured out about this Rehab Act, and I couldn't get workers' comp because workers' comp at that time, if you were injured at work in the federal government because you were gay, because they harassed you to death, that wasn't covered with workers' comp. And the ACLU said that the Navy engaged in unrelenting, systematic, anti-gay harassment and discrimination. And they're very strong in their statements. So it was a very difficult struggle. It went on for like 9 months. As I say, the Navy knew I was dying. And here's another thing. At one point, I kind of gave up. I was really hungry. I was in bad shape. And I went to the Navy and asked if my CD4 count is so low, and if your CD4 count is below 200 for 2 consecutive months, you can go on AIDS disability. That's the law. And mine was 74. It had been for months. And I asked the Navy if I could just retire from the federal government on disability, and they rejected that. That's unlawful. I was eligible for disability, and they denied that. They were hoping I would die. It's very, very sad. So my brother came to my house one morning, unannounced. It kind of surprised me, and came into my house, my condo, and saw that I was in very bad shape. I was shaking. I was just in very poor condition. And he said, Tom, you know, by this point, Bill Clinton had issued the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. And a lot of gay veterans and gays and lesbians were disillusioned and disappointed, and we kind of gave up. And so everybody kind of forgot about my case and about me, and it was just, we just were sad. It was heartbreaking for our community. And we invested so much into that, and Clinton's compromised and had the Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So my brother told me, he said, you were at the March on Washington, 1 million people saw you. You were on national television. You know a lot of people. Write a letter and tell your friends around the country what you're going through, what's at stake. That if you live and survive, you win and you go back to work. And you're the first gay to go back to work. But if they have to help you, you need money for your survival. So I wrote a letter, and I want you to know thousands of dollars came in from across the country. And I was very touched. It really turned my life around. I went from great depression to great hope. And I decided to get a job. I got a job as a security guard working the graveyard shift because I had to be available to work the daytime at the Navy. If they got a job for me, I wanted to go back to work. So I worked graveyard shift as a security guard, and that turned my life around. I'm so grateful to our community. You know, we're cohesive and we help each other when we're in dire straits. And the gays and lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer of this country donated thousands of dollars to my survival fund, and we hung in there. So the Navy agreed that I could come back to work. And but they said because I'm gay, I couldn't have my secret clearance again. I couldn't have a job with a secret clearance. And the ACLU balked at that and said, you know, there's no reason to discriminate against him. Just because he's gay doesn't mean he's not a threat to national security. And so so the Navy finally agreed so I could keep my clearance, but they gave me a job that didn't require a classified level of access. They put me in the comptroller's office, which was business sensitive, not secret, but I still had my clearance. And so I'm the last gay federal employee to have access to classified information challenged by the federal government. Because right after that, Clinton changed that and said that gays could have access to classified information. And I'll tell you a little story. Frank Bettino was a gay FBI agent who, his case settled in February of '94. And his case was about secret clearance, and mine settled in May of '94. The ACLU and the Navy settled out of court. The terms and conditions were confidential. There was a substantial settlement, and the Navy said we did not settle. ACLU did not settle until after Navy Secretary John Dalton signed an executive order adding sexual orientation protection to the EO policies. And I should back up. I meant to say this. I missed this very important point. Representative Barney Frank talked to President Clinton before the Navy settled and said, you know, this is tragic. Your transition team, your administration asked him to come out of the closet. You asked Tom to come out of the closet. He came out of the closet, and now you've kind of abandoned him. You've settled with don't ask, don't tell. You compromised. You've abandoned him, and he's almost, Navy retaliated, he's almost going to die. And so that's when the Navy Secretary decided to add EO, sexual orientation to the EO policy. And we didn't settle until after he signed that new EO policy. And so perseverance pays off. And the Navy at that time had 252,000 civilian employees, and this was a great victory for the gay community. So we had sexual orientation protection. I went to Washington, D.C. I met Navy Secretary Dalton. He presented me with the Navy Leadership Award. He apologized, and it was wonderful. And I went back to work for the Comptroller's office and retired on age disability in 1995. Because of our ACO case, the Navy added sexual orientation protection to their policy, EO policy, more than 4 years before President Clinton signed an executive order making it throughout the DOD, which means the Navy had it more than 4 years before the Army and the Air Force and the rest of DOD because of our case. We were definitely before our time. More than 4 years before the other branches of the service got the same protection. 1996, I went to Washington, D.C. Candace Kingdon and I were the Grand Marshals of the Washington, D.C. Gay Pride Parade. We had a gay veteran color guard. I've been the Marshal of Gay Pride in Jacksonville, Florida, Norfolk, Virginia, San Luis Obispo, Palm Springs, Santa Barbara, Ventura, and I enjoyed it very much. I spoke to the Library of Congress Globe twice. Navy Globe was because the Navy added sexual orientation protection. There was a Navy Globe long before there was a DOD Globe. And the Navy Globe honored me with this award in 1996. That was before DOD Globe, just the Navy Globe. That was the first thing we had. Because only the Navy allowed gays to serve openly. I moved to Rancho Mirage, which is near Palm Springs, in 1998. In 2001, I led the effort to dedicate America's first LGBTQ Veterans Memorial in Cathedral City, a Desert Memorial Park. That was a national news story. Rush Limbaugh and Michael Reagan criticized it. So-called Reverend Fred Phelps' family came to Cathedral City. tried to toss urine on our memorial, and the police stopped him. That was a national news story in 2001. In 2016, I met my husband, Swann Hernandez, and we had to ask permission of the Department of Homeland Security to have the first same-sex wedding in immigration history. And we did in March 2016. That was an international news story. It's published in The Guardian in the United Kingdom, front page of the USA Today. I'm the founding chair of the California Democratic Party Veterans Caucus. In 2000, I was the co-chair of the Salute to Veterans of the Democratic National Convention. And we had a Salute to Veterans, a nice program. James Carville was our special guest. And we asked Vice President Gore, in support of lifting the ban, if we could put a rainbow flag on stage with the military service flags. And he agreed, and we did. And the VFW state commander, balked at that and protested and was upset, but Al Gore approved that. We had the rainbow flag with the military service flags. I'm legally blind due to severe retinitis, which is a disease you get when you have advanced age. I'm active in the Catholic Church, and I'll say that I've studied the Bible very closely, and in Matthew's Gospel, Jesus heals the gay lover of the Roman centurion because of the Greek word paris is used in the Greek text, and if you translate it, it means younger gay lover of an older man, and that's in Matthew's Gospel. So the Roman centurion who said, Jesus, I'm not worthy that you enter under my roof, but only say the word, my servant shall be healed. That Roman centurion was gay, and his lover was gay, and Jesus healed him. And in the 1940s, Virgin Mary appeared in Norway and predicted the gay civil rights movement and said it would be a good thing. I'm a leader in the Veterans for Peace and AMVETS, American Veterans. I'm proud to say I've met every American president since Richard Nixon, including Trump. I met him in August. That's 9 presidents. I met 3 vice presidents who didn't become president, and 2 chairmen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'm going to be buried at Gator Cemetery, right across from Leonard Matlovich. So if you've been to Leonard Matlovich's grave, just look right across the road, and you'll see my headstone. Reverend Barney Frank autographed this picture and said, I'm a role model for everyone. And I like Barney Frank many times. And like I say, he helped me. He called President Clinton and told him what had happened to me and asked President Clinton to intervene and help me. And I'm very grateful to Barney Frank. I love him and appreciate him and value him for the rest of my life because he probably saved my life because he intervened to help me. He's a hero. Please know that LGBTQ employees did not gain their civil rights because some Pentagon official was kind or enlightened. I put my life on the line and shared my story with the national news media. We educated the American people and almost died to win these rights. As the Navy knew I had AIDS, and they delayed, they retaliated against me, and they wanted me to die so we would not get our rights. And so we fought back. And in some ways, though I don't want to brag on myself, I'm just a regular person. What I did was very innocent in my opinion. The Clinton transition team asked me to come out, and it was just natural. I came out. I didn't think I was going to be making a big change. I didn't think I was doing anything important. I thought it was just to be one person out of 10,000 gay veterans around the country telling their stories. And but I had a high position in the Navy, and they didn't like it. And of course, going against Colin Powell and winning over him, the Pentagon people were not very happy with me. So in some ways, I'm a trailblazer, and I've opened some doors. My efforts and sacrifices are dedicated to the cause of freedom for DOD gay employees that come after me. It's important for our current LGBTQ employees to keep the door open, because once the door has been opened, always remember there are dark forces that want to close it. So you have to stay in the doorway. You can't go back in the closet. You have to stay out and stay active and stand in the doorway, because there are forces that will try to close it. You have to stand in the door so they can't close it. If your body's in the door and you're out and you're active, they can't close the door. So you have to be active and out. My headstone says, you must never give up hope or give in to discrimination. I want to thank God for the ACLU attorneys, Alan Friel and John Davidson. They spent thousands of dollars on my case. Didn't cost me nothing. They did all the work. And they were wonderful. And I ran out of books, but I hope the public gets some more, and they'll be available soon, hopefully. I'd like to speak, if I can, to the Pentagon, and I'd love to go to Navigar Syscom headquarters and just let the Pentagon and the DOD officials, Navy officials know that I survived, I'm still alive, I'm still a proud gay veteran. And please consider me for honorary membership. I'm low income, I'm disabled, but I'd like to be a member, and I think maybe I deserve to be an honorary member. If you have that available to me, I wish you'd please consider that for me. My email address, I'd love to talk to any of you. It's Tom Swann, Swann Hernandez at earthlink.net. I want to thank you for listening to me and watching this video, and I hope you'll share it with other federal employees. It's important that we know our history, and thank you. It's been a blessed opportunity to speak to you. Thank you.